Spooky thing happened to me a while ago, not pre-typed or anything, but I'll share if people are interested. My whole family is pro-fun. My parents not big gun owners, but supportive of the whole idea and like shooting and such. Go to gun range one day during a long weekend. They do free rentals. Try out an AK-47. Immediately fall in love. Dad buys me one for my 18th birthday. Fucking sweet. Only gun I've owned up to now was my lil .22 bolt action my grandpa got me when I was little. Suddenly a lot more confident in my abilities to get shit done because I can shoot at things now. Live on Sanibel Island, it's right off the west coast of southern Florida. Super nice place. Only problem is that there are no high schools on the island. Nearest one in Fort Myers, 45 minutes away. School bus ride is over an hour long. Bus arrives just after 5 a.m. every day. Way too fucking early. Wake up one morning, house is colder than usual. Go about normal morning routine. Put on headphones, walk about 10 minutes to my bus stop. Bus stop is right underneath power lines. Hear them buzzing really loudly. Remember a couple years prior when then exploded and flew all over the place. Melted power lines landed in the same spot I was standing in. Decide it would be better to move farther away. On the opposite side of the road is foliage and an opening to the beach. Can see shoreline from where I'm standing. Buzzing getting louder. Just then it occurs to me that my iPod stopped playing a long time ago. Only sound I can hear is that buzzing. I'm a very paranoid person, just kind of freeze up listening to the silence. Nothing for a good few minutes. Suddenly hear car door slam behind me. Guy getting out of his car in the parking lot of nearby closed convenience store. Start chuckling to myself, feel silly for being so scared of nothing. Guy walks around his car and up to the front door of the store. Looks inside. Tries opening door. Doesn't open, obviously locked. Tries harder. Still nothing. I'm a bit freaked out again, wondering if I'm witnessing a break-in. Think to myself it's weird a potential burglar is wearing cargo shorts and flip-flops. He gives up. Turns around and sees me. Kind of looks like he smiles, not creepily or anything, more in a friendly neighbor you haven't seen in a while kind of way. Waves. Still freaked out, wave back timidly. Guy gets back in his car, starts driving towards bus stop. Oh fuck, don't look at him. Stops car right in front of me.
Hey Anon, how's it going?
Who the fuck is this guy and how does he know my name?
It's going alright.
What are you doing out here at this time?
I'm waiting for my school bus.
You're still in high school? I thought you graduated.
Nope, almost there though.
Start calming down, probably a friend of my parents or something and I don't remember.
All by yourself out here?
At the moment, I suppose so.
Be careful, there have been reports of bobcats and stuff out here.
Oh yeah, I heard about that, thanks though. By the way, what's up with you trying to get into the store?
Looks a bit distant for a moment, like he didn't understand what I said.
I think I left something in there earlier.
It's 5:20 in the morning and he's going back for something. Complete bullshit. Think it's better not to question it. See the lights of my bus coming up.
Oh hey, that's my bus.
Expecting him to leave. Kind of just looks at me, as if waiting for something.
Okay, I'll see you later.
Still just looking. Get on bus, we get going. His car sits there for a moment before driving off. School day passes without incident. Take bus home. Do normal stuff, day passes, go to bed. Wake up the next morning, usual routine. Randomly remember bobcats and such. Decide to not listen to music on the walk to my bus stop in case anything tries to sneak up on me. Standing at stop. Of course, hear more damn buzzing. Move to different spot again so paranoia will relax. Can see the coastline far more clearly again. Just watching the waves smash on the shoreline. See something move. Very dark out, hard to make out shapes. Silhouette of something is going up and down the beach. Walking back and forth along the coastline. It's probably just a person with a metal detector or something coming out before the crowd. Shape is getting bigger. No, it's just getting closer as it's walking back and forth. Yeah, they just must be beachcombing. No big deal. Shadow stops in tracks, looks like it's completely facing me now. Suddenly a very big deal, standing there staring at Shadow. Shadow is just looking at me. Completely frozen. A minute passes. 2 minutes. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Where the fuck is my bus?
Oh, hey Anon.
What? Shadow starts walking towards me. Gets closer. Can see it clearly in street light now. It's the fucking guy. Oh, he's a lot bigger than I thought. I back up a bit. He notices. Stops walking.
Oh, sorry, did I scare you a bit?
He's standing in the middle of the street. I don't respond.
Hello? You alright there?
He's acting like I'm the fucking weird one. Headlights coming around the corner. Doesn't even look at the oncoming car. Gets stone cold pissed off look on his face. Walks backwards onto beach. Car passes. I book it home. Running as fast as I can. Drop backpack because it's too heavy to sprint with. Get home. Lock all doors behind me. Wake up parents. Tell them everything. They agree to call cops in the morning if I'm still scared. Go to bedroom, lock door, curl up with AK. Can't sleep. Morning comes. Decide to not deal with police. I've dealt with my fair share of overly friendly people around here. Parents give me the day off from school. Maybe this isn't so bad after all. Around 11 a.m. rolls around, leash up dogs to go for a walk. Still haven't slept since I ran home that morning. Right as we walk out the garage door I see something. Big black thing leaning up against my mailbox. Walk to the end of the driveway. It's my backpack. Oh fuck. Grab it and head back inside. Tell dad about it. He says fuck it and calls the cops. Police shows up at our house about 20 minutes later. Answer questions, give description. The guy hasn't actually done anything illegal so they can't do much. Agree to keep an eye out for him. Somewhat helps put me at ease, not leaving the house for shit though. Dad decides it's time to bust out a couple of the guns he's had hidden in the back of his closet in case some serious shit happened. ARS and Mossberg's out the ass. Never knew he had these.
See? You'll be fine, no relax.
Cool dad. Head back to room and completely crash. Fall asleep around 2 in the afternoon after a Netflix marathon. Wake up at 11:30 p.m. Oh fuck my stomach hurts. Haven't eaten all day. Get up in a haze. Check my phone. Several missed calls and a bunch of texts from my parents. Oh shit. Hey, we're heading out for dinner. You want us to bring anything back for you? Pretty much all of it was asking if I wanted any food. Oh hell yes. Text back, hey sorry I was asleep, yeah if you guys can pick something up for me I'd appreciate it. Immediately get response. K, when do you guys think you'll be back? About an hour, wait. Look at clock. Almost midnight. When did you guys leave? No response. Mom must be several glasses of wine in. Decide to get myself something to eat. Cereal here I come. Walk downstairs. None of the lights are on. Turning on every single light as I go. Don't hear my dogs anywhere. They're yappy little bastards, they'd have started barking from seeing the lights turn on or something. Pour cereal and milk. Reese's Puffs yo. Start heading back up the stairs. Stairs are tile, they don't creak whatsoever. Completely silent as I'm walking back up. Reach the top of the stairs, turn to walk into my room. What the fuck? Man-shaped shadow on my wall. Completely freeze. The only noise I can hear is myself breathing very slowly. Slowly put down cereal. Oh fuck my AK is in my room. So is my machete. I'm gonna fucking die. Walk backwards downstairs. Don't take eyes off bedroom door. This was not smart of me. Slip, fall downstairs. Parents' room door opens. Mom walks out.
Anon, what the fuck happened?
So utterly confused and scared at this point. Put my finger over my mouth to indicate she needs to be quiet. Anxious look on my face convinces her. Dead silence. Hear 3 very distinct footsteps. This wasn't some shit that sounded like footsteps, these were fucking footsteps. Clearly coming from my room. Look of fear and realization shows up on my mom's face. Slowly walks into their room and wakes my dad up. I'm still sitting on my ass in front of the front door. See dad walk out of room wearing dirty ass tidy whities. Holding a .44 revolver. Walks over to my room confidently as fuck. Nothing, no sound. Walks back out. Looks at me. You're fucking kidding me. Run back up the stairs and into room. Dad follows me. Nobody is in my room. Grab my AK and go to sweep the house. It's unloaded, but looks scary. Completely go over house with my dad. Nobody is there, doors are all locked. We finish and head back upstairs. My mom agrees she heard the footsteps. She can't find her phone either. Oh shit. Pull phone out and show them texts. They both say they didn't send them and they didn't go out that day. All 3 of us just stand there for a moment contemplating what this could mean. Angry look appears on my dad's face. What's up? Then it dawns on me. The only way the doors could have locked is if someone on the outside had a key, or if whoever relocked them was still inside. They're still inside the house. Hear 2 more footsteps. My mom hasn't caught on yet.
What? What's going on?
My phone goes. Text message. From my mom. Home, tell my mom to call the cops. She calls from the landline, explains that someone has broken into the house. Dad tells her to clarify that we're all white so they hurry. She actually does it. Cops show up in less than 5 minutes. Oh shit, it worked. Dad lets them in. 6 of them go over the house. Find guy hidden in crawl space in the back of the boiler room, which is right near my bedroom. It's the same fucking guy. He was arrested, charged with a couple of things, and I haven't seen him since. Turns out he did live nearby, technically. Lived out of his car and supposedly had been stealing food from that convenience store for a while. According to my mom, he started off friendly but kept hitting on her, so she started avoiding him right before shit got weird. We haven't figured out how he managed to get in with all the doors locked though. My guess is that he'd been hiding there all day. Still have trouble sleeping without a gun nearby. Not as spooky as a skinwalker, I guess, but fuck me if I wasn't terrified. Be me. 17 years old. Started hanging out with an older dude named Dino, mainly because he would take me to a lot of parties and buy me beer. Stay out late a lot of nights and do random shit. One night we're sitting in cardboard with a couple other people. Dino mentions a haunted graveyard he's been to before. It's called Gothic Cemetery. Fuck it, let's go. Starts driving there. On the way there he starts explaining to us the backstory about the place. Says it's named after the infamous Dr. Gothic, whose real name was Albert Speaker. He did illegal abortions in the early 1800s on women. On a number of occasions, the surgeries were botched, and the pregnant women would be killed in the process of the abortion. Seeking to avoid the authorities' interference with his practices, the doctor would remove the bodies of these young women from his house under the cover of night. He would take them to the pond at the back of Gothic Cemetery, where he would dump their bodies. Some bad shit happened at this place. On the way there, while he's telling us about the horrific events that took place, I start to feel uneasy. Not sure I want to go anymore, but have no choice as we are already on the way. The ride there was a half-hour long, but I swear it felt like we teleported there. It felt like 5 minutes of being in the car and we suddenly arrived down the dark dead-end road and at the cemetery. There's only one house on the road and no lights were on. Not sure if anyone even lives there. Get out the car with Dino and 2 other friends. It's dark and late, probably 2 in the morning. Warm summer night, but here it was freezing cold, and a thick fog covered the place. Complete silence, and no wind. The hairs on the back of my neck and arms stand up. From the road we walk up a small set of stairs and enter the cemetery. A small one with maybe 10 old broken gravestones and some trees. Dino says to follow him back through the cemetery to the pond. I'm shivering because of how cold it is, and a very uncomfortable airy feeling sets in. We follow Dino back to the pond, which is maybe 100 feet tucked away in the back of this plot of land. No other roads, just the one we took to get here. Walking towards the pond, and Dino starts telling me that the doctor hung himself on a tall oak tree in the back and people have seen him hanging from the limb. We are all approaching the pond now. I stop. See something across it. Eyes looking back at me. Bright red glowing eyes. My friend says, "Do you see that?" I don't move a muscle, just completely paralyzed. Another set of glowing eyes appear. We are all stopped and staring at the eyes.
What are those wolves?
My friend mutters quietly. 5 or 6 sets of bright red eyes staring back. We all try to look away but can't. Like we're in some sort of trance, and nobody can break out of it. I try walking closer, but it's like there was a force stopping me from going any further. Not a physical force, but like a wall of energy. They are still there, watching us. Nobody had flashlights on, so these eyes weren't reflecting lights like an animal's normally would. These aren't green or yellow either. They are glowing, bright red. Suddenly we see headlights behind the pond. It looks like a car pulling up right next to us. There's no road back there or only land. We assume it's the cops and all start running back to the car. Running away, the headlights get closer. They shine directly on us. Then, they disappear. Nothing. It's dark again. And we don't hear any vehicle. It's dead silent again. What the actual fuck?
Where did the fucking headlights go?
There is no roads over there. There is no one here but us.
Dino says, confused as all hell, but we aren't panicking, just don't understand. We are still getting out of here. Start hearing what sounds like a drunk girl crying in the distance. Oh fuck no. JPEG. Whatever it is, it's wailing and screaming. I see a hazy white figure moving in the fog. See the figure moving side to side and quickly getting closer. Start fucking running again. Running so hard and fast I can hear my heart beating in my ears. My chest hurt and I almost fall to my knees completely winded. Almost throw up. Look behind me one last time and it's disappeared. We all get to the car. I'm about to open the door but I stop and I look at the car because something catches my eye. The window is fogged up. It's covered in tiny handprints. Like little baby hands were pressed all over the window. Get in the car and drive the fuck off. I've never been so scared in my life. We don't really talk much about what we experienced in the car. I suppose we were all in shock. Besides Dino. He starts saying,
I told you it was not a joke, I told you we would see some shit.
He then goes on to say that 5 years ago he was leaving the cemetery one night with some friends and he lost control while driving and went off into a ravine. He crashed and one of his friends in the car died. Why would he bring us here? Why the fuck would he want to come back here? Look over at friend named Diana in backseat with me. She is holding a tiny glass bear she found on one of the graves. You shouldn't have took that, I say. A couple weeks later Diana goes absolutely schizo. Friend tells me she's just not the same anymore after that night. She tells my friend she's hearing babies crying randomly. She tells my friend that she wants to go back to Godelsberg. He said,
Hell no, you are crazy.
I look at her profile on Facebook. She has a picture of a Godelsberg cemetery as her cover photo. Whatever spirit she disrupted when she took the glass bear must have followed her. I haven't seen her since. I haven't talked to Dino in years. The dude is just a bad person in general and brings bad energy wherever he goes.
I am shocked I have never seen this mentioned on X, or really at all online, but there are ruins in Montana that are really out of place. The area was guarded by the US military, black trucks claiming that the site is a missile site, but in reality the locals all know what is there. I will green text my experience the one time we went hiking and didn't encounter any G-men. Be 14 years old living in Billings. Grandparents live in Eyak, Montana. One summer during the second Bush administration my parents sent me up to Eyak to spend some weeks with my grandparents and cousins. The first few days, it's rough, going on my grandparents' farm dealing with basically living off the grid, no Game Boy and no Xbox. My cousins were older and treated me fine, but the chores midsummer made me exhausted and stressed. One day my cousins asked me if I wanted to go four-wheeling with them, and my grandpa. I agreed and we head off into trucks with the ATVs in the trailer headed northwest. I forget how long we traveled, but we eventually arrived to the trailhead. My 3 cousins and grandpa all had ATVs. I had to ride bitch with my cousin Simon. Grandpa told us assertively to stay on the trails as there were grizzlies in the area foraging, but they tend to stay away from the trails due to the noise. We set out the 4 of us with grandpa at the lead. I remember how beautiful everything was heading down the trails. After a few hours we stopped at a small lake and had lunch, laughing and joking. In the distance we could see Garver Mountain. Grandpa told us about the secret military base hidden in the mountain. As a kid I thought of games like Halo, full of super soldiers fighting aliens. Cousins were enamored by the idea. Grandpa warned them of the black helicopters and vans that arrested people getting too close. My cousins agreed to not head in that direction, but I knew they were lying. We packed up and set off to head back to trucks, Grandpa again in the lead. About an hour into the drive I realized my cousins aren't following Grandpa and heading towards the mountain. I yelled to Simon asking him if this was a good idea. He reassured me it would be great. Eventually we hit a fence with some warning signs telling us to stay out. We traveled for about 20 more minutes through some thick forest, until we reached a break in the fence. The break was big enough to ride through. I remember the screech of the fencing against the sides of the four-wheeler. We traveled down valley for a bit as a river ran near the mountain. Eventually we see columns next to trees, old ones that kinda looked Egyptian. We stopped and got on foot looking around. Realizing we passed a large ruined building, we started exploring the grounds. There were carvings of bird people everywhere. They were simple and looked like humans with bird heads and long legs. Other carvings included circles and triangles in odd patterns. My cousins were laughing about how awesome this all was and they felt like Indiana Jones. We approached the main building and it was massive but overgrown. There were old boxes everywhere with army stuff stamped all on the outside, and rusted generators and equipment in the center. I was nervous. I wanted to leave, but my cousins continued on into the main building. More bird people carvings everywhere, and a massive stone pillar in the center. At that point, we hear a helicopter echoing through the valley. My cousins joked that it's the men in black and we should run. This freaked me out and I started crying as we ran back to the ATVs. We peeled out of the site and headed back towards the hole in the fence. My cousins were laughing while I was crying. Waiting for us at the hole were 2 big black SUVs, which I thought odd, considering how thick the forest was. Overhead I could hear helicopters. It sounded like more than one. The guys waiting had guns drawn and were wearing normal clothes, like the operator guy from the K-Mems. They arrested us and brought us to a ranger station, where we stayed for a day in a small cabin attached to the building. My cousins were freaked out and asked for help, but every time they were told to shut up by the men outside the door. Eventually my grandpa showed up and told us we were all going home. No one spoke to us as we left. The ATVs were gone, and the other truck we drove was gone too. My grandpa said they took them, and never to talk about this again. The entire drive home was quiet. We got to my grandparents. My grandma was crying and hugged us. They told us to never talk about this to anyone, and if anyone asked, we broke down in the woods and grandpa rescued us. We never talked about it, with each other or my grandparents, and certainly never to my parents. About a year later in school I overheard someone talking to another kid about the hidden temple in the Kootenai forest. I asked him about it, and he recounted a story about how his dad and grandpa found the same place while hunting one winter. The kid described things perfectly. Fearing the government guys, I told him to never talk about it. Even now I am a bit uneasy discussing this. I am not sure if anyone else has ever been up there. I tried using Google Earth and other providers to try and find it, but no luck. I am not sure if the trees cover everything up, or if the government edits things like that out. Similarly, searching online pulls up nothing. I'll never forget the bird men carvings and all the odd shapes carved into the weathered rock.
Holy shit. This thread is still here? Okay then. Deployed in GANISTAN. Sent on another BS recovery mission, something about abandoned munitions in a turban town. We are sent to confirm how much is there and what condition it's in, so it can be airlifted out. We get dropped off a little more than halfway there and have to fast march the rest of the way there. We arrive at about 0600 and the whole town is abandoned. DBs scattered and some in the houses.
Anon, take herp, derp and fuckface and search those houses on the north end.
First few nothing eventful, but the second to last one we heard noises. So we prep for breach. Lucky me, on point. Again, hold up guys, it's barred from the outside. Fuck it, I have charges, I got this. .jpg, blammo, let's do this. Clear left. Clear right. Clear, oh my god. Fucking red sand scripts all over the walls. Noises louder like someone whimpering. Two humanist K objects in far corner of the room.
Contact front.
I yell. It's just some kebab crying in the corner with blood on his face, clutching a black hood for dear life. Figure next to him covered in black robe looks like a burqa. Logic dictates woman. Guy is crying and chanting something and squinting because he now has 4 flashlights on him.
Herbie, what the fuck is he saying?
It sounds like he is praying.
Tell him to stand up, we have to search them.
Herpy is our translator in case you didn't catch that.
Sim salibim.
He says he can't stand up, his legs are gone.
And holy fuck, how did I not notice that his legs look like they have been chewed off? Quietly panic.
Herbie, ask him what the fuck is going on.
I
don't know, he won't answer me anymore. He just keeps praying for forgiveness from Allah.
Fuck that.
Derp, go search them.
Searches man, he's clean. Praying gets louder and more irritating. Derp reaches for woman and she starts moaning like a fucking wildebeest. Derp backs up and draws to fire.
Herbie, tell her to take off the burqa and put her hands up.
At this point I don't give a fuck about cultural respect. Man starts freaking out, trying to move away. I notice now most of his back is gone. I can see bone, blood, muscle.
What the fuck?
I raise weapon. This next part is kind of fuzzy since at this point everyone is freaking out a little and yelling. Herpy is yelling at the woman. Habib is yelling at Allah. Derp and fuckface are yelling at me asking what to do. Woman starts shrieking and groaning, a sort of inhuman tortured soul kind of noise. Man starts loosing his cookies. Starts smashing his head against the wall over and over. Watch in disbelief as Habib literally smashes his brain into pudding. All noise stops. Feels like forever quiet. All of a sudden the thing starts screaming, loudly. It stands up. It was not a burqa, just a large black cloth. It's tall, like over 7 foot. I can see its arms and legs, dark brown wrinkled skin. Long nails, yellowish blemishes scattered. Too scared to move or think. The noise is so loud it hurting my head and making my cup my ears. It backs up to the wall and somehow crawls 7 feet of its terrifying ass into a hole roughly the size of a football, ass first. I mean, holy shit, it looked like a giant spider getting sucked into a vacuum a quarter of its size, all while wearing a fucking blanket. Derp fires 2 rounds in the hole. Too shocked to say anything, just standing there with a stupid look on my face. Radio lights up.
Anon, what the fuck is going on? We heard shots fired.
Nothing, Sarge, we have it under control. After coming down from shock, we quickly discuss what the fuck happened and what to say to everyone else. Decide not to look crazy and cover it up. We cover Habib with a rug and try to wipe off the red later discovered blood, writing on the wall. Report back for an ass chewing on why we radioed when we were breaching a building but not reporting any conflict that needed firing a weapon. The four of us talked a few times more about it, how it was weird no one else heard the screams or saw anything running away. I never went back to that base after I left on leave. I was transferred and debriefed on the situation. My guess is someone talked. No matter how bad I wanted to tell the Shrinker's base about it, I don't want to be prescribed crazy pills. I already have some for PTSD I don't take. I know what I saw. We all did, and I will never forget it. Amazed that someone didn't post it yet in countless /k/nope threads I've been in. Comes from very first /k/nope thread. Heading for Innowoods with a bunch of mates somewhere in Northern Europe. We decide to hike to this old abandoned Cold War era military facility. Reach the facility after 2 days of hiking. Shit is cash. We spend the day exploring and plinking birds with 22s. By nightfall we set up camp in one of the empty warehouses. We go outside, set up a campfire and start making stew. All of a sudden we hear the loudest and weirdest roar I've ever heard. We all shit ourselves, grab our rifles and stare into the darkness. Something is moving about 100 meters out. We hear it rushing through the woods into the facility area. We stand there, silent, listening. Then it stops and suddenly it is dead silent all around us, just the stew slowly boiling on the fire. We look at each other and have a brief chat. We decide to carry on with making the stew. Next morning we wake up and start packing. Everybody is making jokes about how we got so scared of some bear etc. My buddy sees something lurking on top of the biggest facility building. We try to have a look at what it is, but it's too far away, some 200 meters maybe. It is just standing there, with 2 legs, probably staring at us. The thing is huge, maybe over 7 feet tall. I reach for binoculars to have a good look on who is trolling us with ghillie suit. Just as I find the binos my mates start shouting. I look at the creature, or whatever it was, and it seems to be running via the facility wall like a lizard very fast. By now it is clear it is not a human, nor any animal I know of. It disappears behind one big bunker structure. We decide to nope the fuck out of there. We're scared shitless even though it is day. As we are hiking back we don't take any breaks before nightfall. As the sun sets down, we make a camp and start preparing supper. Everyone's a little tense and we try to joke around. We decide to do guard duty during the night. My shift is 01 to 03. Birds are singing like crazy, they do that during the night here, and I managed to see a lone rabbit hopping around our campsite. I would have popped that fucker, but I wanted to let my buddies rest. Suddenly the birds stop singing and the rabbit stops, raises its head like it's listening to something. The rabbit nopes out of there very fast like it's running for its life. I feel very uneasy and flick on my flashlight and shine it towards the darkness. I'm hoping to see a glimpse of a fox etc. that could have explained the strange behavior of the other animals, but the forest around us seems empty. Just as I'm putting the light out I see something move behind the bushes around 100 meters away. It was something big. I shine the light directly at the bushes and try to get a look through my 10/22s scope. I managed to see something moving there and I believe I saw a pair of yellowish eyes. Then it stands up. I don't know to this day what the fuck it was, but it was hairy looking, very dark and had a face. The face of lighter color and there were 2 yellow eyes. The thing was around 7 feet tall, somewhat human shaped. Although I didn't get a very clear look with my shit deer flashlight I was 100% sure that thing wasn't a human so I started panicking, raised my gun and lit that fucker up. I emptied the whole 25 RD Butler Creek mag in about 3 seconds, I didn't even aim. My buddies woke up and started shouting and it was all chaos for half a minute. I tried to tell them what had happened as fast as I could. Having dropped my flashlight I didn't know if the creature had been hit or if it was there anymore. One of my buddies picked up the light and directed it at the direction I was pointing my gun at. And there it was, just standing. Suddenly the thing just kind of falls down and starts slithering at us, making no noise at all. We start screaming, grab our packs and guns and start noping out of there. We must have ran like 10 kilometers straight up before taking a break. All of us were shaking, we didn't share a word. We walked the rest of the way to the public campground in DEFCON 1, weapons ready and listening to every crack. I've never been as happy as I was when I saw some German tourists grilling sausages by their RV. They were all like what the fuck. When we exited the woods with guns in low ready stance, we said nothing, walked to our car and drove away, breaking pretty much every speed limit on the way. We talked about the thing on the way home. None of us knew what it was, but everyone had seen it and everyone was convinced that it was not a human nor a normal animal of any sort. We decided to stay away from the woods for a while. Problem is that the wildlife around here is scared of people, even children. And there hasn't been one bear sighting in over 80 years. The best is yet to come. Last summer we decided to be tough guys and find out what the hell that thing was. This time we would go with 3 ATVs, in case we would have to bail out fast. We took 2 cameras, 3 308s and 1 1276 with slugs. There were 4 of us, by the way, load of survival gear, and one of my buddies managed to get a Gen 2 NV camera. We also had 7 pipe bombs, black powder and 2-inch iron tubing with caps at the end plus Visco fuse, in case shit got out of hand. Yay, it was kind of lame fake operator tier shit, but we thought we'd get all famous and shit if we actually killed it or got footage of it. Anyways, we entered the woods with our gear and headed for the facility. Again at the facility, everything looks normal and birds are singing again. No sign of anything abnormal. We decide to map the surrounding area and look for anything suspicious. Nothing was found. We make camp at the very same warehouse as we did the last time. Night falls and everything is still normal. We have guard shifts during the night but nothing happens. Next day we start exploring the woods area around the facility. We find a peculiar pile of dead trees, looked like someone had hauled them there. We take a closer look. The trees are arranged in a fashion similar to a huge bird's nest. In the middle of the nest there is one half-rotten moose carcass and a shitload of different animal bones. We start quietly noping back to our campsite. We park our ATVs next to the warehouse we keep our camp in. We enter the camp warehouse and see our camping gear all torn up, the somewhat expensive cameras smashed to against the floor, food taken and sleeping bags torn to pieces. Fuck. We take everything we could in like a minute and start driving the hell out of Dodge. It's evening by the time we get back to public campground. A police officer stops us by the gates and checks our gun permits. Then the officer proceeds by asking whether we wanted to volunteer for a search operation. Our ATVs would be much appreciated. Some hiker had apparently gone missing in the nearby forest, 20 kilometers from the facility site. We look at each other and shake our head. One of my buddies quickly says something about being late and we drive out of there. The dude who went missing was never found. We decided that we wouldn't go in or woodsing in that part of the country anymore.
Did the hiker made it out alive?
No, he didn't, sadly. But there you go. Dude who went missing actually was found. Local police released it to the media. Here's my story. Be 16. Be black and have family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntsville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers they put out in the woods for hunting or camping. Down south cousins suggest that we go out there to camp. No, I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the fuck out of me. Collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring necessities to camp out for a few days. We get to the camp and it's obvious something is weird. Air has this weird electric smell like right before a storm, like ozone. We think nothing of it and unpack and go down to a little creek to swim for a few hours. All of a sudden some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm and says hello and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. Tell him about my uncle who he knows, and say we're camping out. He tells us we need to be real careful out here and stick together because there was a big animal in the woods. His son, who is my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. He says okay. I'm going to stop green texting because the story is fairly long and the format is harder to write in. So we end up playing football. Dicking around with me, there's the white kid Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. In total, there were 5 girls and 6 boys. We all were around 15 to 17. We ended up just dicking the day away. So, we head back to the camp and pulling out some stuff for a campfire, even though the trailers both had kitchenettes. Tanner says that his family's property sits up against my uncle's. He wants to run home and ask his dad if he can come out camping with us. My cousin Rooster says he's going to go with him since it's going to get dark soon. One of the girls also wants to tag along. It's about 7 o'clock, and it's starting to get pretty dark. They take flashlights and take the trail toward Tan's property. The rest of us chill. We make s'mores, drink and kiss on the girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's the smell of ozone again. You could smell it over the smell of the fire we had started. This really nasty, coppery smell like right after you've had a nosebleed and it's stopped. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that nasty metallic, back of your throat smell. We immediately think that it's some kind of electrical malfunction, or someone left a hot plate on or some shit. We search the trailers and nothing is on, and we can all smell it. All of a sudden, we can hear people booking down the path toward us, and Rooster, Tan and the girl all come running into the clearing, out of breath. And they don't even break stride, they all run into the trailer, right by where the fire is. We all get the fuck out of there and into the trailers. They end up calming down, even Rooster is crying his fucking eyes out at this point. All the while, the fire is guttering lower and lower, so my other cousins say fuck it and are about to go outside to get the generator out of a shed between the trailers. Tanner goes,
"Fuck no. Lock the front door, ain't nobody else going outside."
He's been crying too, and his eyes are bloodshot and puffy and his pants are dirty as shit. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house. His father said sure, he could go out camping, but to make sure they were careful on the way back, and that maybe they should take one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before. One of their pigs had been ripped up and half-eaten. They assumed it was just some big cats or coyotes, even though they don't usually fuck with live animals. He had gone upstairs and packed his stuff, and told his dad they would be okay without the rifle because coyotes avoid people. So they started walking back toward where we were camping. Rooster finally stops crying and shaking. The girl already had, but she was just staring out the window with a dumb look on her face. He says they had gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they started to hear shit in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first what the fuck it was. The girl says that she heard something in the bushes right off the trail and they all beamed their flashlights over there and there was someone standing back in the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said they shouted at him and told him that he was scaring the fuck out of them and what a dick he was. He says that's when he realized that the guy was facing away from them. They keep walking, and they start smelling the nasty coppery ozone smell. They say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side, and it's a dude standing in the forest, backward slightly closer to the path. So now they start power walking and Tan keeps going.
"I should have taken the fucking rifle."
As they're telling the story, the smell is still super strong even inside the cabin. They say that after they started walking faster, a kind of low gibbering had started coming from both sides of the wood. As they booked it back to the trailer, the girl said she flashed her light out to the side of them and saw something jerking itself through the woods. The gibbering just got louder and louder, and when they could see the light from our campfire, something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the track. Then they just flat out ran as hard as they could to the trailer. So we're out in the fucking woods, and we're assuming at this point it's some rednecks or some shit trying to fuck with us. All of a sudden, my other cousin, Junior, starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid that was telling him about the GOATMAN or some shit. We promptly tell him to shut the fuck up because we don't need any spooky talk right now. But he just keeps going on and on about how it's the fucking GOATMAN, and how we're in his woods and blah blah blah. Now at the time, I had never heard of this GOATMAN or any of that, but then a couple years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had met him for a roommate and I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a fucking man with the head of a goat and he can shapeshift and he gets among groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo, and it's bad mojo to even talk about it and even worse if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16. So my cousin is going,
"The GOATMAN's going to get in and fucking get us."
The girls are all terrified and my cousins and I are all fucking trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies or an animal. All of a sudden, the smell just goes away. To this day, I haven't even experienced anything like it. Obviously, smells usually fade away or lessen, but it literally was just there 1 second and not the next. So it's after an hour, making it around 9 or 10. We've stopped shitting bricks enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. We figure it was just some assholes trying to fuck with us, so we don't go back home, because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or some crazy shit. Nothing else weird happens that night. We stay another night, and for the main part of that night, nothing happens. But at about 1 in the morning, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. As someone is finishing some too spooky story, I don't remember what about, the smell comes back. It's so fucking strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up, and you can actually feel how clammy the air is. I say we should get inside and that this isn't right, we should have just fucking left. We all go back inside, and we're standing around. My cousin keeps going on about how it's the GOATMAN. My other cousin Rooster tries to shut him the fuck up, and all the while, I'm just feeling that something is wrong, and I can't figure out what the fuck it is. We end up sitting in there for a while. The smell is just as strong, and we're terrified and all huddled in this camper. We end up cooking brats for everybody because nobody wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 brats. We have a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everybody a hot dog, then get mine. After a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get another one. He starts grumbling about how I got 2 brats and everybody else only got 1, and I look at him like he's fucking stupid. I tell him that everybody only got 1 because there were only 12 brats, and that if he wanted more, he should open up a new pack and cook some more. That's when the girl that had been out with Rooster and Tan just starts screaming.
Oh Jesus! Oh Lord, get it out!
She's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on the cousin standing up what the fuck is wrong. Me and him both glance around the room, and I feel my heart fucking sink. I run the fuck out of the cabin and the girl runs out with us. The trailer door is banging against the side of the trailer as everybody books it out. One of my cousin's friends asks us what the fuck was wrong. I start counting us. There's only 11 now.
I shit you not.
My cousin verified. There had been 12 people in the cabin. But being that everybody didn't really know each other well, nobody had noticed the whole fucking time that there was an extra person. And then I realized earlier that I had kind of noticed something was off. You know how when you're just dicking around having a good time that you don't sweat the small shit, and you don't always keep track of certain stuff? I'm dead sure that someone else had been in the trailer with us, and that they had been there for at least a fucking day, eating with us. What makes it worse is that I couldn't figure out who it was, because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person / the GOATMAN. The girl kept praying to Jesus and we're all sitting outside. Eventually, we get big ass sticks and go back in the cabin, but there's nobody in there. We count again, and there's 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door. We explain what the fuck happened. The girl says that she realized too, and that when she was about to say something, the person sitting next to her had grabbed her leg hard, leaned over toward her, and said something she couldn't understand. So we are pretty much scared as fuck as we huddle together, and I fall asleep. When I wake up, the sun is just coming up, and half the people are asleep and the other half are packing our shit up. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up. And some people think that we're just fucking around and still want to stay at the trailers. I just want to get the fuck out of the woods. The girl's name was Kira, the one that the GOATMAN had touched. Anyway, I asked her if she really thinks it was something bad, and she says she just wants to go home and that she doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we decide to split up. The 4 that want to go can go, but I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin and it's my uncle's and I have to lock up. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking this shit seriously, and I definitely didn't want to be out in the woods for another night. I spend the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to get the fuck out of Dodge. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle and says he's going to be back, so there are just 7 of us left by 4 p.m. At around 5 p.m., he hasn't made it back yet, and we're getting extremely fucking antsy. The only reason I stopped begging them to leave was because he went to get a gun. At about 5:30 p.m. or so, the one cousin that did stay says that the girl Kira is outside. We all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, if she was so fucking scared, why the hell would she come back? And then I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind, the whole time, the coppery smell has been gone. Now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them. Everybody, and these are the people that wanted to stay in the fucking woods after we had the goddamn GOATMAN in our midst, is laughing at me and asking if I set this up to scare them. I'm looking at them like, I'm not fucking bullshitting you at all right now. I ask them why the fuck would I play like that? So one of the girls goes outside to get Kira. She gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kira starts heaving, I don't know how the fuck to describe it. Sort of like if someone with their back turned was laughing without actually making any sound. It was this fact that made me realize there was not a fucking sound in the whole woods, it was dead silent. This was like late September, so it was still fairly hot at the time, but super chilly some days too. And you could usually hear big ass geese honking, or some kind of birds or squirrels chit-chatting. I step out the door and tell the girl to come back in the fucking trailer right goddamn now. She backs up into it and we lock the fucking door. We pull down all the shades except one, and put a guy there in a chair to watch Kira. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so. Eventually, the guy turns to say that she's still there, and there's a huge fucking bang on the door. We all jump the fuck up and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The banging is super fucking loud. My cousin is holding one of the girls, the other two are kinda giggling with nervous laughter, and me and the other two guys are shitting bricks. Then we hear Dan. He's screaming,
"Let me the fuck in, stop fucking playing."
We go over to the door and open it, and he stumbles in with a rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird happened in the forest, but he had seen a girl. Mind you, he said it was not curious standing there. When he had gotten to the edge of the clearing, she had turned toward him with a slack-jawed look and just stared him down, slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing towards the camp. He said it wasn't until he was almost halfway to the trailer he had realized that she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire, and without him even seeing her move she had been turning, inching closer. He said he just ran the rest of the way back to the cabin thinking it would open. And when he got to the door and it was locked, he turned and it was about half the distance to the door. He looks around the room and then gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear,
"You know there are only 7 of us in here, right?"
I get that feeling where your stomach drops to your nuts. It had been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where, and then when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day. It has just slipped right back in. We looked out the window and there is nobody out there. So we recount everyone and then basically, I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier. And everybody says 8. I say, well, how many are here now? They all do the count and then realize there are only now 7 people in the cabin. 10 had brought back a couple boxes of ammo and his rifle. And he had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest because he didn't think his dad would believe him if he said it was GOATMAN. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours and that in the morning we can all go back to his place and his cousin will drive us home. Now I'm really fucking terrified, but I at least feel better because we can be American and shoot the fuck out of whatever it is if it comes back. But then my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks that I'm trying to be funny and prank them, and that she's getting really scared and that I'm not funny. He keeps telling her I'm not that kind of person, and she says,
"Well, how do we know the girl wasn't just Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the Goatman, how do we know that this is the real Tanner, and that Goatman just didn't kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun?"
So we fucking get into a huge argument about this, where me and Tanner like, we could seriously be in danger because at the very least someone has been sneaking themselves into our fucking trailer without us knowing and mingling with us, and at worst, something bad is in the forest fucking with us. One of the girls is crying and saying she wants to go right now, and we're trying to tell her we shouldn't because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point the sun is starting to go down and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while, but we can't really get a station out there with anything decent. So we turn it off at about the time that Dan's cousin shows up. He was like 19, I think. At this point, the sun is just barely over the horizon and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer and we whisper to Tan asking if he's sure that's his cousin and he says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp, then walks in. He kind glances at all of us and looks a little confused. He says,
"Where's your other little buddy at? I figured she would meet me up at the cabin. Is she a little slow or something?"
He also asked whether we had been cooking blood in the cabin, because it smelled like blood and hot pans all the way up the trail. We are all like fucking nope, but we ask him what the fuck he's talking about with the girl he saw. He had come down the same trail Tan had been using and he had come up on one of YOUU's guys' buddies standing in the middle of the trail, looking at him slack-jawed. He had asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was just look at him. Then, she smiled at him and he said he kept walking. She couldn't seem to keep up with him and kept lagging a little behind him. He said he asked her if she was hurt or something, and if she needed any help. But, she had continued to stare. Eventually, he had been walking and turned around a bend in the trail. But when he turned around and went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He assumed she had taken some shortcut through the woods to our trailer. We tell him the whole story of what's been going on. I half expected him to say we were full of shit, but he just listened and then sat down on the couches in the living room. Tanner's cousin gets back to the girl. He says, when she had kept trying to lag behind him, it had kinda weirded him the fuck out, so he tended to keep her in front of him, but no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little behind. And that he smelled this nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. Eventually it got really strong. She had said something really low that he didn't catch, and when he had turned around, she had been right the fuck up on him, and he stepped back from her. It was at this point he asked her if she was okay. If she wasn't, He offered to carry her back the rest of the way. She just kept staring. He said he reached out for her, as in to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance because she was off to the side of where he had put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point, we know this shit's real, unless Tan is playing a joke, which we can tell he's not because he's almost pissing his pants. So they load up their rifles, we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until about 11. To this fucking day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's some huge prank that my cousins played on me and just never revealed so I would shit for the rest of my life. At round 11, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty gross blood-like smell, like cooking blood and singed hair. Dan and his cousin, Reese, get the fuck up instantly and grab the rifles. There's like a half knocking, half clawing at the door, and I shit you not, there's this voice, and it sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to talk. It says in this halting, weirdly toned voice,
"Let me the fucking stop fucking playing."
It made my fucking nuts creep up against my body, and one of the girls just starts crying and calling on Jesus. It was so fucking obviously not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence, and that's some shit that I never realized until that moment, but all people have a certain cadence when they talk, no matter what language. All people have a certain kind of rhythm to talking. This shit didn't have any kind of cadence or rhythm. One of those YouTube cats, that's what the fuck it sounded like outside the door. So now I'm in full-on terror mode. We keep yelling outside,
"Who is it? Stop fucking around, man."
And it just keeps saying, "In or let me the fuck in," for almost 15 minutes. Then the smell goes away for a while. And for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around in the woods and shit. Every couple minutes it'll come back into the door, and say something. Finally when the smell fades away, it's around 2 in the morning, Reese says,
"Man fuck this,"
and opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air, and says something to the effect of,
"In the name of Jesus Christ, go away."
He fires 2 more times, and then from the woods right up against the river across from the trailer, it sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. Then it starts screaming and it sounds almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like I seriously have never heard any shit like that, and you can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires over into the tree line and then starts backing into the house. We lock the door, and we can hear this shit keening and screaming. Reese says something had come out of the bushes, super low to the ground and crawling toward the cabin. He had shot at it. Pretty much, that was how the rest of the night went. It was literally screaming constantly for the next 2 hours, and we could hear shit moving out into the tree line. But it never came back up to the cabin until everyone had finally fallen asleep. Dan had been sitting in the chair watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else heard or saw this, and he told me 2 days later, after the whole thing was over. He said he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped. He'd been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and then lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He just assumed it was one of us and that the guy had nodded off. Then he said he kind of realized something was wrong, and while pretending to be sleeping, he counted us. There were 9 people in the cabin. He didn't want to try to shoot at the fucking thing and have it kill us all then and there, or have Reese wake up and start shooting at us, kill ourselves. So he just stayed awake all night, pretending to be asleep. He said sometimes, it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing, or heave like it was laughing. But then it would lay back down. The story closes pretty weak, because from my perspective, nothing happened. When we woke up, I noticed that Dan was a little jittery, and that he was avoiding looking at all of us. But we ate some breakfast, packed up, and started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin and said he'd lock up and bring me my uncle's keys. He told us to just start walking, and that he'd catch up. Which I didn't really want to fucking do. We got a little bit up the path, and when he came running up, we just jogged back to his house. His cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Dan had gone back to lock up and looked in there. We were too stupid to lock a screenless window, and it was fucking up when he went in there. I'm guessing it had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up and then getting in among us. It walked with us all the goddamn way back to his house, and then he said it lagged to the back of the group and looked him dead in the eyes before walking into the woods. I'd like to start off by saying that I don't have a fucking clue why I'm posting this on /x/ or, really, at all. Maybe I'm afraid of dying, or something. The events described in this story happened a month and a half ago, in Shenandoah, West Virginia, although I typed this up about 2 weeks ago. I just haven't really had the guts to post this until what happened yesterday. The story starts in late September, when my family went to go visit our relatives, who invited us up to celebrate one of them, Desiree, getting like $2,000 in some scratch-off lottery thing. They live in this really fucking shitty part of Shenandoah that people from Charlestown, Shepherdstown and Ranson, basically the least rednecky parts of WV, like to call squalor holler. It's way up on the mountain, and exactly like how everyone pictures it when they hear about it, nothing but ramshackle shacks, rusty-ass rebuilt trailers, everything fucking covered in decades-old Christmas decorations because they're all too busy being smelly rednecks to ever clean up. Real deliverance shit, just no rivers or canoes. The relatives we were visiting are absolutely confirmed inbreeders, all cousins fucking each other. We don't refer to them as aunt, uncle, whatever, just relatives. Not terrible people or anything, just absolutely cartoonish, depressing hillbilly stereotypes. So anyway, we're up here in this godforsaken trailer. It sucks. There's like 8 of them, plus me, my dad, my mom, and my sister. About 2 hours in, my mom takes my cell phone so that I can focus on the family time together, which is bullshit. All we did the whole time was eat TV dinners and be forced to watch NASCAR and shit. After like 6 hours of this shit, about 10 minutes before we're supposed to leave, it starts raining. We know how treacherous the roads can get up on the mountain, so we decide to wait for the rain to die down. Flash forward 2 hours later, it's fucking dark as hell, 10 o'clock, and there's a flood warning for the area. I have my phone back by this time, no reception, though, of course, I'm playing Tetris and Texas Hold'em and stuff, when suddenly I hear my dad start losing his shit in the next room. I walk over, and it turns out that they let slip that they'd buried their kid, Thomas, outside, and apparently were afraid the rain would wash up his body or some other horse shit. The kid was like 6, he was attacked by a dog, and they never told the cops. Just fucking buried him like he was a family pet. My dad's flipping his shit, and rightfully so, because, you know, we live in the 21st century and all. So our relatives all say they'll sort it all out in the morning. My parents tell me and my sister to stay in the same room as them during the night, and we do. None of us really suspected that they'd killed Thomas or anything, since they're really peaceful. They didn't even own any guns aside from this one old-timey double-barrel shotgun they had on a mantle. Nevertheless, we were creeped the fuck out, and intended to tell the cops in the morning once we got to town, so, it was like 3 in the morning, I couldn't sleep. Power had gone out for the 5th time or so, and I'm not able to charge my dead phone. Worst part is, I could see Thomas's little grave right outside the window. Little cross on it and everything, and I assumed the kid couldn't have been buried deep at all since they were so worried about him just washing up out of the grave. So I was just fixated on it, kept being drawn to looking out the window. And then I saw the fucking worst thing in my life. Something was creeping through the trees toward the house. I stared at it for a while, but couldn't get a good look at it since it was raining and the brush was so thick. For a few minutes I assumed it was 2 really pale horses, kind of ambling through the woods side by side. But then it walked into the moonlight, and I saw that it was all one thing, like a kind of human torso, but wider. It finally stepped into full view, and I saw it had something like 6 legs, kind of somewhere between a beetle's legs and a horse's legs. 2 arms, right where someone would normally have them, but they were about a half a foot longer than any normal man's arms. It had a bald head, but the face looked like some sort of fucking bizarre masquerade ball kind of mask. This fucking clenched up, furrowed forehead, and a nose that looked sort of like a crow's or a raven's beak. It didn't have eyes, either, just like the depressions where eyes would go. It looked like it had a human mouth, underneath proboscis. What still strikes me to this day is that seemed to have a penis, too, like right on the abdomen where a normal person's dick would be. The thing moved sort of gracefully, and made these soft thumping noises when it moved. It must have been like 7-8 feet tall, but sounded like it weighed maybe only 150 pounds at most. It starts walking towards Thomas's grave, and then I finally snap out of whatever trance I was in, and just scream. My mom is the first to wake up, and I tell her to look out the window. She rushes over, and doesn't really seem to understand what she's looking at. After a minute, though, the thing bends down and starts pawing at the grave with its hands. My dad and Jasper rush in, and Jasper just fucking loses his shit. Screams like a little girl, runs back out of the room, yelling for his father, yelling it's outside, it came and it's outside. I look back and see the thing is digging furiously at the ground, kicking up huge mounds of dirt. I hear these sounds of feet running around the house. I think they were looking for the shotgun. The thing reaches into the hole and grabs up what I assume was Thomas's body by the leg in one hand. The thing kind of gallops back into the woods, snapping all these branches and shit, and then that's when we all hear it. A kid crying. The sound of a child sobbing and crying, from the direction that the thing took off in. We left as soon as the rain let up, at like 5 a.m. I don't even think we told anyone at the house. Drove straight back to Renson, only stopping for gas. No one said a word to each other. My family refuses to speak about what happened. I tried to bring it up once, just to make sure it was real. My dad told me to shut the fuck up, so I did. I typed this up about 3 weeks after it happened, but just saved it to a notepad file and left it alone. Never mentioned it to any of my friends or anything, just tried to erase it from my mind by getting absolutely fucked up drunk whenever my thoughts lingered on it. It mostly worked, up until yesterday. See, I work at this gas station in Ranson, from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. I work the register, keep the place clean, and take out the trash. Yesterday, when I was bringing the trash bags over to the back of the building for the dude in the morning to take care of, I heard what I had assumed to be some junkie fucking around in the dumpster. I yelled at whoever it was a couple of times to get the hell out before I called the cops. But as I walked towards the source of the noise, I suddenly heard those same footsteps. That soft thump thump. Hooves or feet, or whatever the hell they were. I turned right around and went back into the store and hid behind the counter. I look over at the outside security monitor and see some kind of movement from just off screen, something huge casting a shadow and moving. Catch a glimpse of, I don't know, an elbow or something. A pale limb, darting in and out of view. It had to have been the same thing. I waited for it to leave, and after a while, it did. I woke up behind the counter at 6 a.m. this morning to my manager giving me this fucking look like I'm a drug addict or something. Went home, typed the rest of this up. And that's about it. Be me. Big fan of hiking and urban exploration. Scheduled to go to work. Beautiful day out. Callout.exe. Paid time off.jpg. Decide to take a day off and go on a hike I've been eyeing for months now. Runs through what looks like an old abandoned camp or town in the middle of the woods. Sun shines bright, managed to pack necessary hiking gear. Food and weed lol. Following map and basic GPS on my phone. A few hours of hardy walking. Finally make it to the overgrown and broken down cabins and bungalows. Cryptic aura intensifies, something dark about this place, but don't let that kill my vibe. Chalk it up to my nervous energy. Light up a small joint I brought, packed with Keith sent photo of abandoned cabin to friend. Cool, huh? Didn't respond yet. Continue exploring around and put in headphones to jam out to music. Sun starts to set. Serene lighting and red colors fill the sky. World turns into watercolor painting. Aesthetic but eerie. Stop to stand perfectly still and take out headphone to listen to the forest. The woods are dead quiet. Not a single cricket. Uneasy. Suddenly hear distant shouting? Or maybe crying? Laughing? Can't tell. Sense shiver down spine though. Stand frozen. Skin goosebumping. Very distant noise. Laughing/crying sound gets louder. Begin to run. Cabins up ahead. Screaming sounds less than 200 feet away. Turn neck around while jogging. See it. Our eyes meet. OSUT.jpg. Legs start running before brain fully processes. Run like never have before. Adrenaline making heart go brrr. Behind, monstrosity echoes laughter and crying. Finally managed to fumble out phone. Snap quick pic while running across a cabin porch. Pic related. Lost it in woods. Reach car sweating. Drive home like madman. Looks at photo once at a safe distance. What the fuck is this thing? Does anyone know if this thing is a cryptid? I don't know how else to describe its sound other than like a coyote. Laughing/crying woman sound. This happened in South Dakota by the way.
The being in the picture either looks fake, or it looks distorted, which would explain the strange quality of the face. However, I lean more towards the latter, though only you could tell me if the face is actually distorted, or not. Generally, the nature of your encounter is quite standard and consistent with a humanoid creature, which has many names. I call them crawlers. Others call them skinwalkers or wendigos or rakes or whatever else. They are known to be active at darker hours of the day and also night. They tend to inhabit isolated places, and seem to be inclined towards abandoned structures. They are well known for their mimicry abilities, and seemed to use them for the purposes of either confusion, or to lure and prey. Their presence, and I attest to this personally, is foul, evil, and deeply repulsive. One seems to enter into an overpowering feeling of vulnerability and fear when they are around, even if unseen. They are very, very fast, and generally very tall. You are incredibly lucky it didn't decide to kill and eat you. It's possible it was just trying to scare you off its turf. I wouldn't go back there without a gun and several friends. Hell, I wouldn't go back there, period.
I went through the grueling 22 weeks of infantry OSUT, and amidst the multitude of challenges, one experience that stands out as the most haunting was the night land navigation exercise. The stage was set deep in the heart of a desolate swamp, around 0200, when everything was cloaked in darkness and uncertainty. I remember clutching my map, the dim red light of my flashlight flickering intermittently, casting eerie shadows all around me. Then, in an instant, a sensation washed over me like an electric shock. Every hair on my body stood on end, and the red light of my flashlight danced eerily. Instinctively, I turned off the light and strained my senses, scanning the surroundings. And there she was, an ethereal silhouette of a woman, dressed in what appeared to be a pioneer's attire. Her presence seemed to defy all logical explanation. I blinked for a moment, and as I dared to glance back at the spot where she stood, she had vanished, as if swallowed by the shadows themselves. I chided myself, attributing the apparition to exhaustion and my imagination playing tricks on me. With renewed determination, I picked a direction that seemed plausible and embarked on my chosen path. However, as I trod through the undergrowth, a sense of foreboding persisted. The very air seemed to be charged with an otherworldly energy. Strangely, the sound of my own footsteps was accompanied by another set of sounds, the subtle crunching and breaking of leaves, synchronized with my every move. An unsettling sensation overcame me once again, and my hair stood on end, like soldiers at attention. I brought myself to an abrupt halt, whipping around to confront the source of this eerie mimicry. To my perplexity, there was nothing to be seen but the impenetrable darkness. I shook off the unease, resuming my march, only to be haunted by the strange phenomenon once more. Each time I spun around to confront the invisible stalker, I found nothing but the enigmatic void of the night. Eventually, with a mounting sense of dread, I concluded that discretion was the better part of valor. Collecting the few points I had managed to secure, I made a swift and determined retreat to the starting point. Breathless and shaken, I turned in my navigation equipment and slumped onto my gear, the encounter still fresh in my mind. The silence was eventually broken by the arrival of another soldier, who appeared to be in a state of distress. His haste seemed incongruent with the remaining time for the exercise. As he went through the motions of turning in his gear, he turned to me with an air of urgency.
"Hey,"
he began hesitantly.
"Did you happen to encounter anything strange out there?"
I gestured toward my disheveled appearance. "Well, it wasn't exactly a walk in the park, if that's what you're asking." His eyes widened as he continued.
"No, I mean, did you see her? The woman in the pioneer outfit?"
Stunned, I nodded, my heart racing as his words resonated with my own experience. Before I could fully process his revelation, he continued with a sense of urgency.
"I was recording my navigation data. When my light started flickering, a rustling from above made me look up, and there she was, perched in a tree, her gaze locked onto me, with a haunting emptiness. I ran like the wind and didn't stop until I reached here."
A third voice chimed in from behind us, a fellow soldier who had remained quiet until now.
"Wait, you both saw her too?"
he interjected. Our nods confirmed his suspicion, and he leaned closer to share his own harrowing encounter.
"As I ventured into the swamp, she emerged from the water, her gaze fixed on me as she slowly turned. I was paralyzed, and it was only when the lieutenant approached me from behind that I snapped out of it. I pointed to where she had been, but she had vanished, leaving no trace."
The storyteller in our group revealed an honesty and sincerity that dispelled any notion of jest. We were now united by an inexplicable and terrifying experience that transcended our individual perceptions. As the night wore on, the stories flowed, painting a collective tapestry of unexplained encounters and shared dread. That night, we were not just soldiers enduring training, we were united by an otherworldly event that defied explanation and bonded us in a shared struggle against the unknown.
This was a story my uncle would always tell me as a kid during summer vacations to entertain us children. The following was treated as the unadulterated truth by the entire family, especially my uncle, who was generally discouraged by the family from telling anyone. I can't possibly do justice to how my uncle would tell it, but here goes. B. Uncle, 12 years old, growing up in shitty suburban town in northern Ontario. For privacy reasons, I won't say the name. Growing up there meant complete boredom for any young person involved. The most you could do was play baseball, or fish in one of the local rivers. Kids who didn't start underage drinking, or narcotics at a young age were drawn to the woods as a form of entertainment. The town was spread out but not heavily populated. Just meant there were a bunch of empty houses and empty lots. Uncle has best friend called T, and a younger sister called S. Obviously not going to use real names. These kids would fuck around constantly in a woods, blocking up rivers, and making shitty forts that would collapse within months. Uncle had a fascination with mapping out the whole place, constantly plotting new ones whenever something new was discovered. Section of the town that was not so populated was affectionately and historically referred to as Weston. Thus began the stories of the Weston Manimal, an urban legend in the shitty suburban town that went way back. It went by other names, but my uncle's generation called it that after the TV show Manimal that was popular at the time. One neighbor owned the DVDs of the first season he ordered from the States, would have TV parties with the show. In the Weston section of the town, dogs would show up dead and trash was rummaged through on an almost weekly basis. That combined with a legend of a wild man or animal person in the town made kids go crazy with their adventuring trying to find it. Senile old people in the town would tell them stories of seeing a pale humanoid figure in the woods. Uncle and friends wouldn't always believe them, but sometimes they would take what they say to heart. Parents were advised to educate their kids on the dangers of the woods, not because of the legend of the Manimal, but because there were some genuinely dangerous bears and coyotes in the woods that could fuck a kid up. Kids played this off as protecting us from the Manimal. Imagination and fear in the kids got so bad that some teachers had to sit all the kids down and tell them the Manimal was a stupid old legend the town made up generations ago. This just made my uncle and his friend T want to prove it even more. One day a kid from their class says their dog went missing and is asking everyone if they saw it. Uncle thinks that the Weston Manimal must have gotten it. Decide to check their maps to see which places in a woods they haven't gone before. One big old hilly area in the middle that they generally stayed away from, about 1 kilometer wide. Only reason they hadn't gone there yet was because one of the rivers that flows around the town wraps around it, and gets too wide and deep to wade across easily. The other side of the area was thick brush, that no one made a path through, also couldn't get through it easily. Decide the time is now. If the Weston Manimal isn't there, then it doesn't exist. Being 12 years old and stupid, they decide to begin their expedition to find the Manimal, including sandwiches, a carton of milk, and 4 cans of Pepsi. No flashlights because autism, but bring binoculars to search for it. T decides to include his little sister S, who was a couple years younger than them. The three begin construction on a shitty boat, made of cheap wood and glue. Ended up being more of a raft that just looked like a boat. At least that was how my uncle described it. This is what they'd use to cross the river since it would take too long to cross the other way through the thick brush. They grabbed to paddles and put on their stupid red and blue ball caps to begin their epic journey. They leave just before dusk one day without telling their parents, because you could do anything as a child back then. They start walking carrying their dogshit boatrift and struggle, all the way through the woods, past their forts that saw many a night in battle, past the old gravel pit, where they'd light gasoline on fire for fun. Eventually make it to the river, probably 40 feet to cross at this section. Whip out their paddles and start paddling. All three pile into the hull. Way too much weight. The fucking boat starts leaking as soon as they paddle. Being stubborn autistic kids, they think it will make it there and back. By the time they get to the other side, the boat's completely sunk, and they're all wet. Still have some daylight left, and decide they'll just head back through the thick brush afterwards despite the time it would take. T tells his sister to check out the other side of the area while the two of them look up around the hills. The two march up the dry gravel hills to a miniature cliff face on the other side. They're looking down for any signs but can't make anything out. Patiently stay quiet and wait for S to come back. Eventually they hear something down the cliff side of the hill. They both look and see something moving down there, near a hole in another smaller hill. Something's moving by stream of flowing water. Uncle puts his binoculars up to his eyes. When telling the story, Uncle always chokes up at this part. Looks down at a small greenish-gray humanoid, completely naked, roughly the same size as my uncle, about 5 feet, incredibly skinny, arms that were too long for its body. It had nasty matted black hair on its head, at least 1 foot long, wavy and scruffy, obscuring its face. It had cuts and bruises all over its dirty naked body. It almost looked emaciated. It was dragging something behind it, with its incredibly long fingers and even longer overgrown nails. A cut-open golden retriever, definitely the missing dog that belonged to my uncle's classmates. It stopped for a while as T and my uncle were dead silent. Then it looked up at them. My uncle was still staring at this thing through his binoculars. With what little sunlight was left he could make out its face. He always described it the exact same way. Its head was way too round and big for its body, almost spherical with an underdeveloped forehead, super skinny neck with what appeared to be a giant Adam's apple. The long scruffy hair on its head was stained with blood and dirt. It rolled down its face, and obscured some of it. Its eyes were bulbous, black and sticking out too far. A mouth that was way too wide to be normal, going from one side of the head to the other. Its skin on its face was darker, and really tight, almost stretched. It didn't have a fucking nose. It didn't have any fucking eyebrows. It didn't have any fucking ears. My uncle has no idea how long he looked at the thing. Eventually it calmly walked off towards its hole in the ground. T was shaken and tried to get my uncle to talk. T didn't get as good of a look on the thing, but he did see its shape. Uncle was borderline unresponsive. T shoved him down the hill. They made a fuck ton of noise but needed to find S as soon as possible and fuck off back home. The sun is done going down at this point, and it starts to get dark. They start running towards the other side of the area where they sent S. T is starting to panic because they can't find her. Uncle starts to become more responsive as they try to look for her. They don't want to make noise in case they attract that thing. T starts whisper shouting, calling out his sister's name. My uncle stops him from making noise. They can hear the thing from the hole start walking towards them in the brush. They know it's not S because of the noises it is making. They sprint back the way they came, around the opposite side of the area closer to the thick brush. They hide in some bushes for a bit once they're on the other side to catch their breath. S isn't calling out to them, but if she was lost in the woods she should be making noise. This makes T scared as hell for his sister. A quicker way through the brush was closer to where they saw the thing dragging the dog. They devise a plan to get home as quickly as possible and tell their parents so they can come to the woods with guns and find her. They wait a few more minutes as it gets darker and darker. The two start running for the brush but hear a noise. Both freeze. Duck behind a fallen tree. The thing from before comes out into a clearing. Can't see my uncle or T. It's dragging something else. A much smaller dog. Looked brown but couldn't make it out since it was almost completely dark. The little dog is bound with some sort of rope or crude vines. It's squealing and barking up a storm. The thing starts to torture the little dog, cutting it with its nails in certain spots, and pinning its head down. All the while this thing bobbed its head up and down, and made a raspy laughing-like sound. Could barely make out that it was smiling. It started skinning this dog alive and tearing at its meat. Eventually the dog stops moving as the thing begins to eat it. The two slowly begin inching away, trying to make as little noise as possible. As they're walking away my uncle looks behind them. The thing is standing straight up looking directly at them. Uncle panics, and screams and starts pushing T to run. The thing begins to chase them. All my uncle can do is run. He gets split up from T. After a few minutes of running, he was still in the area and didn't make it through the thick brush. Only ran along the edge of the area. He can hear T screaming off in the distance with some other inhuman sounds that he couldn't place. Uncle tries to run to find S while the thing is distracted. Runs to right where they sent S when they showed up. Not a trace. Eventually he finds her backpack, slightly ripped on one side. He gets worried. He begins to look further in the direction in the backpack. Runs past some trees. T's screaming is starting to get louder. Uncle sees something small and long underneath a branch. It's a fucking arm. It's S's fucking arm, wrenched right off of her body. Next to it was a shard of her shirt. Uncle freaks out, begins running blindly. Trees and bushes start cutting at his face and legs. He keeps tripping and stumbling in the pitch black woods. After running for what seems like hours he finds a dirt road he recognizes. He begins sprinting alongside it, in the direction of home. He hears more screaming, but isn't sure if it's real or just his imagination. Running and bleeding at the same time is exhausting him. He eventually makes it to the town hall, and goes the usual route from there to his house. Uncle runs into his porch at full speed, and collapses while trying to open the door. Around this point there's a gap in my uncle's memory. He can't visualize any of this, but it's what his parents, my grandparents, told him. From my grandparents' perspective, he had been out playing for much longer than he should have. Once the sun went down, they called all of their neighbors to see if they knew where he was. Eventually they called the police, and asked for an officer to come to their house to help find my uncle. When they were talking to the officer about what they should do, my uncle ran into the porch, then ran into the door. He was bleeding heavily from cuts on his legs, and one on his arm. He was completely unresponsive and delirious, presumably from the running and adrenaline overdose. He was unresponsive and borderline comatose for the next several days. Grandparents thought he hit his head, but local doctors said it was more likely symptomatic of a traumatic experience. My uncle stayed in his bedroom until he started talking. This is when my uncle starts remembering things. T and S never came home that night. Their parents weren't the worrying type, and didn't report it till the next day. My uncle was unresponsive during the search period, so no one got any information out of him on what happened to T and S. By the time my uncle was back to normal, some cops asked him what he was doing that night and what happened to T and S. At the time my uncle tried to convince himself it wasn't real. He also didn't want to get in trouble since it was his idea to look for the Weston Manimal. He kept his mouth shut. To this day he says it was the biggest mistake of his life, but he was too traumatized to tell the truth. Kids in his class begin to spread rumors that the Manimal must have got T and S, that it climbed into their rooms in the middle of the night and killed them. Teachers and adults told these kids to be respectful to T and S. A few weeks later, my father was born and my grandparents wanted a better life for their two sons in a bigger city. They moved shortly after and my uncle never heard from T or S's family ever again. He claimed that he suffered from serious stress after the incident, that he keeps having flashes of guilt of what happened to his friends. My uncle still told us the story though, much to our older relatives' dismay. I think it was therapeutic for him to get out his feelings about the incident rather than just repressing all of it. He left the gory bits out when we were younger, but as we got older he told us more and more details of the story. He would avoid details of the dogs and the arm, but the way he described that thing was always the same. It was burned into my imagination as a kid, and would sometimes give me nightmares. Now that I'm older I'm not afraid of the story. It's just one of the saddest and most disturbing family stories I've ever heard. I've never really believed in the paranormal or the supernatural, but every time my uncle tells me this story and describes the disgusting, sadistic black eyes of this thing, I believe him. I lived in the northern part of Sakha or Yakutia, Russia for around 10 years and I've encountered a lot of weird shit there. I'll start with some context. B13. Dad and mom break up because dad is abusive. Mom loses court case and dad gains custody. After divorce dad changes and starts seeing weirdos for life advice. Some guy tells him that he needs cut himself from society to awaken his third eye or some shit. So we moved from St. Petersburg to motherfucking City 5. A town so fucking secluded it didn't have a name. Life as you'd expect was fucking shit and boring. The schools there don't even teach English, the official Yakut language or even basic sciences. The locals are cool though, so on to the paranormal stuff. I'll start off with the creepiest one. I've personally never encountered it. In fact I've only known 3 people who claim they have, but the whole of City 5 is scared of it. We call it the Flat Man. It's said to appear in some of the most rural areas of the region. The best way I could describe is to compare to a living shadow, but it's more like a void in the shape of a human on the floor. Its shape cannot appear on trees or buildings, only the ground. Apparently the Flat Man has made entire tribes of people disappear. In 1989 a group of around 10 people went to hunt it. 2 months later clothing started to wash up in the local river. It was their clothing. Apart from being wet the clothing wasn't damaged. The next night screaming could be heard outside the town. Another time some guy was hunting deer. He spotted a deer, but it seemed to have its leg stuck in something. When he got closer he could see the Flat Man holding the deer's leg. It then started making a pulling motion. You know what happens when something is pulled through a tiny hole? Well, that is what basically happened to the deer. Not a trace of the deer left. Hunter instantly runs as far away as he can. I have a classmate. Let's call him Igor. Igor's dad has encountered the Flat Man at one point. Be him. 1992. He works for a small woodcutting business. Patches of forest are valuable in Yakutia, so if your boss tell you to go you can't object. So he's at this spot and he comes across uprooted trees in the shape of a spiral. He tries to get the fuck out, but keeps coming back at the spiral. Notices that the other trees are still bending. Starts feeling weird sensation. His own body is swayed towards the spiral. The pull gets so strong that he has to push himself off trees to move. Then suddenly all the uprooted trees get sucked up into the ground. The force of the pull is so strong it breaks one of his arms. He looks over and there's a massive fucking hole where the spiral was. In the hole he can make out the Flat Man. He starts moving in a swimming motion. See, the Flat Man is called that instead of like Shadow Man because he doesn't move like one. When you turn your shadow changes shape to reflect that. But the Flat can't do that. He can't move his arm through his chest. So he moves in this weird swimming motion. Igor's dad starts running and Flat Man gives chase. The Flat Man can fuck with shadows. Every time a shadow of a tree gets in his way he kinda sways it away, and the entire tree breaks. He makes it to his car, and manages to lose it. Me and a few friends actually managed to stumble onto the crater, and surely enough it was in the shape of a spiral. It was overgrown. The entire time we were near it everything felt floaty, and we couldn't feel smell or taste. And the last guy I know of that encountered the flat man died in 2006, but someone told his story. Apparently he was a hermit and lived away from the town. One day, he noticed the land had risen slightly, and messed with the foundation of the house, which was like the one in the pic. It keeps rising, so he gets a guy to take a look at it. Dude sees it and tells him to leave immediately. Hermit is stuck up, so he stays. He awakes to half of his house missing and a giant pillar in the sky. Some locals saw the pillar in the sky. A few of the braver ones go check it out. They find the guy. He's out cold. Guy's legs are missing. Said his legs were so cleanly cut they weren't even bleeding. They get the guy and drive away. Few minutes later pillar goes back down. Hermit wakes up, says the flat man grabbed the shadow of his legs, and just took them off before he passed out. Never went to the location, because he genuinely lived in a scary as fuck place full of bears and wolves. The flat man is the creepiest one by far. Nomads cover their ears if you bring him up, or straight up start a fight with you. Some of the more integrated nomads tell tales of how ancient tribes tried their hardest to eradicate it, and went missing. He's the only thing that no one dares to fuck with. People don't like talking about him. May 15. 2 years after moving in, me and Dad are having breakfast, and get a knock at the door. Open it. Guy standing there looks almost identical to Pic. Tips his hat and introduces himself as Ivan Ivanovich, basically the John Smith of Russia. This happened in 2009, so the guy is very out of place. Dad, being the understanding gentleman that he is, tells him,
"What do you fucking want?"
Instantly get this sinking feeling in stomach. Dad's speech becomes 10x more polite. Ivan says that he is the governmental representative of City 5. He's responsible for tax collection, solving judicial problems and keeping the peace. Starts telling us about how the town works. I think to myself, I know this stuff. He instantly stops talking and excuses himself. Ivan leaves and we both sit there dumbfounded for a bit. Me and Dad are bringing firewood back home and visit a market. While there, Ivan taps my dad's shoulder. Everybody instantly quiets down. Ivan and Dad start talking. From what I could tell, Dad did some dumb shit, and a few townsfolk were mad. Dad instantly starts splurging out. Then he shuts up. A local comes by and defends my dad. Ivan then says,
"If you continue your unacceptable behavior, there will be consequences. Understand?"
Then I get the sudden urge to nod. Everyone around Ivan, even people who weren't looking at him, nod. Ivan goes around a corner and he is fucking gone. Ivan does so much creepy shit. On many occasions I've seen him just appear out from dark alleyways or rooms. Anyone who fucks with Ivan just disappears. Anytime I talk to Ivan, it's like half the shit I say I don't even think about. I've heard a story that some nomad got drunk and started stabbing random people. So Ivan just came into the bar, and the guy just shuts down and dies. Everybody feels the urge to leave, and when it stops they instantly come back. Both Ivan and the nomad are gone. I remember I once got drunk, and ended up sleeping in some guy's property. Rumors about me start spreading around the community. It's evening and I'm reading a book.
Enjoying your read.
Fucking Ivan comes out of the darkness. It scares the shit out of me, but a soothing sensation quickly kicks. Ivan starts to literally interrogate me, asks really personal questions about life and family. I answer with as much detail as possible, even though I don't want to. Ivan eventually concludes this chat, walks into the darkness and disappears. Ivan's creepy ass face and voice still give me shivers. Sorry for not posting yesterday, was really busy. First I think should explain more about the nomads. The nomads are basically tribes of nomadic horsemen that split off from the main Yakut societies. Their language is very hard to understand, but some nomads have integrated into Russian society. They believe some sort of pagan religion. From what I've been told, they believe in 5 gods. The gods are named after the cardinal directions. North, Cade, god of wind and everything to do with the cold. South, Amnid, god of fertility and nature. East, Zun, god of the hunt and a trickster. West, Vryn, god of guns and death. Tengri is taken from Tengrism and is basically the All-Father. There's also Kezer, which I'll be telling a story about. May 2012. Dad goes out for a drink and doesn't come back. People start telling me to go look for him. This isn't the first time this happened, so I just chilled. 2 weeks go by. A few locals found Dad's body. They request I do a proper burial. I couldn't be bothered, so I just tell them to put him 6 feet under. Next day I'm out gathering firewood, and between the trees I see a pair of eyes staring at me. I try to get closer, but when I blink it disappears. Then when walking back home I see it again on a rock. I can make out its shape. Long skinny legs, small body and big shiny eyes. Very similar to Pick. As soon as I saw it, I knew it was the Kezer. In legend it's basically supposed to be an omen from the gods. If you somehow offended one of the gods, Kezer starts appearing to you. I understood that I had offended some god by not burying my father. I've lived here long enough to know not to fuck with the paranormal. So the next day I gave my father a proper Tengri burial. I stopped seeing the Kezer after that. The Kezer appears a lot to hunters. Most hunter heed the warning and either avoid the area or bring back the catch bag. There were a few stuck-ups though. One guy didn't heed the warning and had a bear break into his home and got killed. Then someone was found impaled on a deer's horn. Another was found frozen in a lake. A hunter's gun once exploded when he shot and mutilated him. And a few people were crushed, were by their own roof caving in on them from snow buildup. All of these people had said about being visited by the Kezer. The guy who got killed by a bear had told close friends that the Kezer's eyes become brighter over time. For him the eyes were bright enough to illuminate his whole house. Had a friend who got quite unlucky with the Kezer. Let's call him Vlad. Vlad loved to seclude himself in the wilderness, and when he had free time he would always go up north to camp. One day Vlad goes camping. Nothing goes wrong, but when he's coming back to City 5 he starts seeing the Kezer. Friend didn't kill any animal, nor do anything that would piss off the gods, so he assumed that the area he was in was off limits. But the Kezer doesn't go away. In fact, he starts seeing wolves stalking him from the brush. One day while Vlad is going to work, the pack of wolves attacks him. One of them latches onto his arm and starts tearing into it. He manages to hurt the wolf, and that gives him enough time to escape to safety. After that, wolves leave him alone. For months Vlad ponders what he could have done, but can't put his finger on it. Then one of the locals said he found Vlad's campsite, and sitting there was a single fucking beer can. Be me. Don't have much money, and a lot of sheet breaks down before winter. If you know anything about northeastern Russia, you'll know that the winters are hellish, so I need money quick. There's a meat vendor that'll pay good for bison. The vendor gets a party together and we go out hunting. The party consists of me, Igor, Vlad, Andrew, Mikhail and another 5 people, but they're irrelevant since we split into 2 groups. Our group goes to a place around 50 kilometers from Chokurda. We're deep in a forest tracking some bison prints. Suddenly hear a low groan. As soon as it stops the wind picks up, and it starts snowing. Snow in September isn't the weirdest thing out here, but it's not common. As time goes on, wind and snowfall become stronger. Vision is so obscured you can only see around 50 meters in front of you. It's starting to get late, so we start looking for a place to camp. We come up to this slope which has a great view of the area. Igor and Andrew stay to set up camp, and the rest of us go gather wood. 5 minutes in we hear Igor shout Nuzda, which basically means holy sheet. Everyone comes back and Igor is pointing at the horizon. I don't know if Igor had eagle vision, but we can't make out sheet. So we tell Igor there's nothing there, continue with our day, and go to sleep. Mikhail wakes me up at around 6 AM. Dude, wake the fuck up. I get out of my tent. There is a fucking giant in the horizon. It was humanoid, but it was crooked, skinny as hell. The arms didn't quite match. It had trees and sheet growing on it. 2 of them grew in the shape of horns. I couldn't make out its features due to fog, and it made zero fucking noise. The only reason Mikhail woke up was because hundreds of birds were perched up and flying around it. All of us get the fuck out and never come back. Got chewed out by our employer and had to do shitty janitor jobs. Didn't care though, cause I'm not fucking with whatever that thing was.
Do you have any more?
Yes, I have plenty more. 2014. Okay, so in between Selik and Bela Agora there's a community of 5 houses. In one of these homes lives this guy we just call Khan. He has hundreds of stories, some so out there even I couldn't believe them. He's very awkward to be around, because all he talks about is nomad culture, hunting and shepherding. So here's a story that involved him. Andrew and Vlad have jobs in the local police. They get an assignment to check up on a patch of land that someone wants to cultivate. It sounds like a boring job, so they invite me and Andrew to camp with them. On the way we see a lot of nomad tribes moving around. When we stop by the community we ask about the tribes. They tell us that they're moving for some sort of summer solstice celebration. Before we leave they insist we take Khan with us. It was plain obvious that they just wanted to get rid of him for a few days. Begrudgingly we took him with us. The whole car ride was very awkward and boring. We finally got our spot, which was around 10 kilometers from Kuberganya. We set up and start grilling shashlik. It's a really fun evening, even Khan got a bit laxed. Everyone goes to sleep at around 12 AM. Wake up at 2 a.m. to fucking Khan throat singing at the top of his lungs. We were pretty drunk and ticked off, so we start telling Khan to shut the fuck up. While we're arguing, Mikhail fucking snaps and starts screaming at Khan. The argument goes on for 2 hours. After everything calms down a bit, we decide to pack up and finish up here. Problem is we're nowhere near our camp. It's like we got moved to some random location. There's a thick fog that obscures anything 5 meters away. Khan tells us we royally fucked up. Tells us that we need fire right now. Everyone scrambles for their lighters. Khan tells everyone to follow him. We think about it for a second, but realize it's probably better to follow the 2-meter tall nomad than stay out here. Khan starts leading us. While walking, Khan is singing some nomad song, and we hear a bell ring. As soon as we hear it, we're all lying face down on the floor. Then hear a chirp and start throwing up water. Khan says,
"It started. Listen to everything we got to say. Make sure to check your back if you hear weird noises."
As soon as he finishes his sentence, there's child's giggle, and all our clothes are tied together. We hear a loud pop and our fire sources become 10x brighter. Khan tells us to carry on. In the fog, there are silhouettes of 4 figures watching us. One is just some big dude with a crown. One is also huge. His knees are bent backwards and he has deer horns. 3rd has a woman's proportions and has goat horns. 4th looks like a normal dude with a gun. We can hear a chorus of laughter and cheering coming from around us. Khan asks Vlad if he's checked his back. We all turn around. There is this dried up, tall person, basically a fucking skeleton, behind Vlad. It gets scared away by the fire, and retreats into the fog. There's multiple of them and they keep trying to jump at us. Khan calls them failures. We come across a rabbit. Khan instantly grabs and kills it. He raises the rabbit into the air and says something in his language. We can hear a bit of booing and groaning coming from around us. Then a deer silhouette comes next to the other silhouettes. The one with deer horns grabs it by the head and snaps its neck. It throws the deer to Khan's legs. Khan tells us to bow down and repeat after him. We do it. The silhouettes disappear and the fog starts to clear up. We find our campsite a few hundred meters away. Khan takes the deer and rabbit with him. We come back to the station. Andrew and Vlad are discussing what to say in their report. Khan tells them to write out the report as if everything was normal, but to recommend him for hire in the field. So that's what they do. And Khan works and lives over there from now on.
Hello/X/. I'm gonna cut to the chase because I think this is something that you will all find interesting. Gonna give a little bit of background information and then jump into green text to make it easier to follow. I'm a former Russian national who served in the Soviet Army from 1983 up until just before the USSR collapsed. I was only 18 years of age when I joined up with the military. It had always been an aspiration of mine to serve my country due to my father being a high-ranking member of the Soviet Union Army, a starship sergeant, which I think is roughly equivalent to a sergeant major in the United States military. From a young age, he instilled in me a great feeling of pride and patriotism for my country, and all I ever wanted to do was be like my father was. I fled my country after the collapse of the Soviet Union and have been living in Poland since 1991, first as an asylum seeker seeking refuge from war, until I eventually was granted a citizenship here through naturalization after living here for long enough. I changed my name, I changed my identity. There is nothing linking me to my old life or family in the Soviet Union, and that's why I feel comfortable finally telling this story. Due to my father's growing influence in the military, it only took me about a year and a half, so around the beginning of 1985, for me to be moved up in the ranks and to be trusted with a special assignment. My father briefed me initially, telling me it was a role of great honor and that I should feel blessed that I have been trusted with such a task. I really had no choice but to accept it. I was assigned by the Soviet Union to be a guard at Sector 12B, a Soviet test facility that had been erected in 1969 in the border zone between the borders of Russia and Estonia. It was apparently a facility of strategic importance and was of the utmost importance that no information about it should ever leak and that it should be protected at all costs. I think that's about all the context you need. I'm gonna green text the experiences I had with possibly some context in between if needed. If you want to ask me about stuff, I'll try my best to answer. Here goes. First day being assigned to Sector 12B. Incredibly nervous as I have only been serving in the Soviet Union Army for around a year and a half before being given this post. My father himself personally escorts me to this facility to show me around. I cannot express how rare and unusual this fact is. Someone of father's rank usually would never bother escorting someone like me, regardless of familial connection. Roll up to the place in a Kozlik truck. My father is in the front with the driver. Me and 2 other soldiers in the back. I have no idea what rank they are or if they're newly assigned like I am. Was taught very early on that small talk and asking questions was a one-way ticket to getting beaten or worse. Finally arrive. We all get out of the truck, and I see the place for the first time. Building was a random abandoned cement factory. Looked like an absolute pile of shit, even for the Soviet Union standards. Building had half-smashed windows and looked to be halfway sunken into the ground like it was being eaten up by the earth. Area was very hot. Massive military presence. Hard to spot if you're not looking though. Father walks way ahead of us. Me and the other soldiers from the vehicle are very awkwardly meandering at a distance behind him. Soldiers at the gate stopped him. Not just a show me your credentials type thing. The soldiers at the gate full on block him and push him away when he tries to walk through. Father loses it completely. Starts going on a crazy rant to the 2 soldiers. Both of them just standing there with a 1,000-yard stare, not even properly taking notice. Still won't move. Father starts yelling out,
"Ты знаешь, кто я?"
over and over again. Father hits one of them. Not a light slap or anything, full-on powerhouse of a punch. Everyone rushes over. Father is restrained. Another officer comes walking out of the building. Isn't panicked or anything. He's just casually strolling over. Motions to his men and they let go of Father. They exchange a few words, with him motioning towards me and the other soldiers that came with us, and then the officer leads my father in. We try to follow them into the building, but once we cross the gate threshold to the outside part of the building, the officers there grab us and shout,
"Нет, подожди здесь."
No choice but to comply. Wait there until they're done. Father comes back out and walks straight past me. Doesn't say a word. Just gets back into the Kozlik and leaves. That was just my first day. It was strange to say the least. When I tell you that I did not see inside that place for months on end, I am not exaggerating. The place was locked up tight. For months I basically had to live outside in the compound area, mainly working on guard duty and sometimes on lookout overnight. 3 weeks into my assignment is when I got my next dose of weird. Late night at Sector 12B. On lookout duty. Technically, I'm here to stop people from crossing the border, but in actuality I'm here to stop people from getting close to the facility. On very strict orders. They do not play around here. Anyone, Russian, Estonian, my own father, shoot on sight. No warning shots. Around 3 a.m., starting to get bored. Struggling to keep my eyes open at this point. Only a few of us awake. 5 at most, I believe. Outside, that is, no idea how many are awake inside, messing around with my SVD. Scratched a BHA into the side of it because I thought I was cool. See a faint glint in the distance. Pull up binoculars and try to take a closer look. Looking intently. Briefly notice a sort of light blue glow that moves from out of a body of water and quickly onto the land. I pull out my rifle and brace myself. The second I get a clear view, I'm shooting. Comes into full view, probably about 400-ish meters away from the compound. Looks to be a human. Completely waterlogged with what looks like algae all over their clothes. Light blue glow is gone. No idea what that was. Sound an alert and then begin firing. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3, 4. I can't hit the thing. They're running on all fucking fours. Manage to graze their left leg, which causes them to stumble. A huge wave of soldiers are piling out of the inner facility at this point, shouting and screaming like someone has just declared war. Front gate soldiers are busting ass down range to flank the thing and to get a clear shot. I stop firing because I don't trust myself not to hit them accidentally. 2 shots. Silence. I'm not supposed to, but I climb down from the watchtower and run with the other soldiers out to the body. What the fuck? Seriously cannot believe my eyes. Body is spasming. Eyes are bloodshot. The sclera looks like it is tinted yellow ever so slightly. Lots of weird marks on his arms, especially around the veins. Notice something sticking out of his wrist. Get pulled away by a few of the inner facility soldiers. Hear Commandeer shouting aggressively from behind my head. They have me fully restrained and have thrown me to the ground. They pull me around to see the Commandeer and I meet his eyes. He is beyond furious.
«Чертов идиот, ты хочешь умереть?»
is what I hear over and over again. Demanding to know why I left my post and why I'm here without being ordered to. Commandeer personally proceeds to beat the shit out of me. Go limp and unconscious. Report. After that I woke up in a holding cell inside the facility with some ice taped to my face. The holding cell was secluded from everywhere else, so I did not get a good look at the place at all. I think I was kept in there for about 3 weeks while they were conducting an investigation. They didn't tell me anything, but my father's name was mentioned. About 3 days before I got released from the holding cell, one of the officers who was berated by my father came to my cell. He didn't come in. He just looked at me behind the bars for a few minutes, then said,
«Так же, как они»,
and then spat on the floor before leaving. Guess he was convinced I was guilty of something. That was only the beginning of my complex time there. I have only a few more strange things that I can tell you about, but I'll save for the last the one that truly opened my eyes and made me fear for my life. Month 4 of my assignment to the place. Had been allowed into the facility a couple of times, mainly just the top level for sleep and supplies. More on that later. Comrades still don't fully trust me, but they're coming around to accepting me being there. Haven't made any friends, but there's one guy, LYCANTHROPY, who I'm familiar with. He often relieves me from watchtower duty and if I'm lucky will make some small talk with me if he's especially bored. Like everyone else here, he's very serious. Typical night, nothing going on. Bored as usual, around 5 minutes left of my duty. Get to rest for 3 hours total before my next duty. Lucky me. See LYCANTHROPY making his way over, I call him Sasha every time I see him, and he gives me a death stare each time, so I start to climb down from my post and hear a massive commotion coming from inside the facility. Incredibly unusual. Very rare that we see or hear anyone stationed inside, especially if they work in the lower levels. I assume we're segregated to stop the flow of information. Essentially, once you start working down there is where you stay. Really loud now. Screaming and banging of something metallic is all we can hear. They must be close to the main entrance. I'm at the bottom of the watchtower. Sasha has now made his way fully over and is staring blankly at the entrance. Entrance slams open. Squadron of 6 facility workers in a strict formation, leading someone out. The person they're leading out is on a metal chain that is attached around their neck. Squadron is screaming,
«Не смотри, не смотри»,
again and again. The person on the chain is barely being kept on their feet. They keep scrambling to try and get down on the floor. It's like they've forgotten how to walk. Sasha is facing away from the entrance and at the watchtower. He is begging me to turn away. I can't. I genuinely cannot stop looking. There are tears streaming down his face. He is pleading with me,
«Пожалуйста, друг, пожалуйста».
Still looking at what is going on. Try to ask Sasha what the hell that thing is, but he keeps choking on his words. The person has visible veins bulging on all parts of their body, mainly on their face. The veins are tinted a slight yellowish color. They are barefoot. Looks like they have partial gangrene on both ends of their feet. Sasha grabs me and forcefully turns me around. He grabbed me by the hair and was holding my face into the ground. Mouth has dirt in it, can barely manage to say,
«Чёртова сука, слезть»,
because of the way he's holding me. Tells me to shut the fuck up. Hear shouting coming from the direction of the squadron becoming more intense. Can hear a sort of moaning or growling that's growing in intensity. No idea what it is. Leader of the squadron is yelling furiously now, telling some guy,
«Я сказал тебе обернуться».
Hear a sudden gunshot. Hear a roar that sounds like it would break someone's vocal cords. Sounds raspy and full of phlegm. Hear a faint whimper before the squadron walk on out of the gate and into the forest. Only know this because I could hear the moaning growing fainter and fainter in that direction. Commandeer steps out, tells us all to get back to positions. Sasha looks beside himself. Lets go of me and very meekly climbs up the watchtower to his assignment. I rush inside to try and get as much rest as I can before my next assignment. 2 hours go by. Still awake in the bunk, impossible to sleep. Couldn't stop thinking about what I saw. Wasn't sure if my eyes were lying to me at the time, but reflecting on it in bed made me wonder a little more. The guy with the chain around his neck, the yellow-tinted veins and the gangrenous feet were not the only things I noticed. Had a scar over his stomach, like a C-section scar, but it was clearly a man. Had what looked to be frostbite on one of his hands, blotchy skin with solid black on the ends of the fingers. Not just that, but near the stomach scar, almost parallel vertically to his shoulder, there looked to be some kind of appendage that was attached by being stitched on. Weird, more than weird. Fucking crazy. No wonder they don't want any of us to see inside. I only got to interact with Sasha a handful more times after that. It's a real shame. One more notable thing happened before my last story. Not just notable, something completely out of the ordinary in regard to my duties. Trying to sleep, still 1 hour left before guard duty. Gonna be alone in silence for about the next 10 hours, a little ways down the road watching for anyone trying to approach. Suddenly get a kick in the ribs. Told to get the fuck up immediately. An officer with a higher rank than me. Does not look pleased to see me. Tells me I have a special assignment that needs to be completed right now. Didn't even think to make a case for my sleep. Didn't want another kick in the ribs. Assigned to a team with 3 other soldiers. One of them I recognized. He came with me in the Kozlik. It's me, him, 2 others I haven't seen before and the squad leader, Mikhail. Receive a very quick briefing. We've been assigned away from the compound. Huh? There's apparently an old settlement around 10 kilometers away from Sector 12B. Has been abandoned for years. Used to be an old mining settlement. Not sure what was being mined there. Don't tell me what we're being sent there for. Told we'll find out once we're there. We get in the truck and drive off. Takes roughly 40 minutes for us to get there because the road is poor quality. Potholes every few meters, also have to be vigilant for anyone crossing or possible enemy reconnaissance. Roll up to the place. Exactly like they said it would be. Complete and utter ghost town. We get out of the truck and line up to wait for instructions. Mikhail tells us that the water supply here is likely contaminated. We are to bring back samples for the facility to run tests on. They are apparently worried that it could spread if we don't discover the source of the contamination. Split into 2 groups of 2 while Mikhail waits at the truck. Mikhail opts for screaming orders down the radio rather than any manual labor. I'm paired with Kozlik guy because of course. We venture into the town. Nothing weird about it at all. It's eerie and silent but we expected that. Bothered me for some reason but couldn't tell why. Most likely I had been at the facility for so long that any silence at all now triggered alarm bells in me. Track down the water source, follow it south to the bottom of the town down an incline. Water stops and sort of pools into a small pond outside the entrance to a mine shaft. Water doesn't stop there, actually goes into the cave, mining shaft itself through a smallish opening. Radio back what we found. Mention that the water looks fine from what we can tell. Little bits of rock and dirt and what looks like some rags inside of it but no contamination. Didn't actually know it wasn't contaminated, just figured it would be glowing a weird color if it was. Mikhail is hurling abuse at us. Asks us why we haven't gone inside the shaft yet. Don't have a reply. Start to make our way in. At this point we're kind of wondering where the other 2 are since the water source wasn't particularly difficult to find and it didn't seem like it flowed out from anywhere else. But we assumed that maybe they headed back to the truck after we radioed into Mikhail or maybe they didn't want to bother with such a menial task at all and decided to leave it to the newbies. Probably thought it was beneath them. Start to make our way in. I end up leading the way. Still not really sure what we're looking for in here. Doesn't look like the water runs into this part. Mine shaft is weirdly lit up. Looks as if the mine shaft was still being used. Very strange. Town was obviously abandoned for a long time. Other soldiers, I guess. Make our way further in, goes fairly deep. Walk for a good few minutes without stopping. The further we go down, the more faint the lighting is becoming. Mikhail didn't give us any flashlights. Didn't realize we'd be exploring somewhere like this. Get to the threshold of darkness and go to radio Mikhail. My dumbass really thought that the radio would work down here. Tell Kozlik guy that we should head back up and radio that we can't go any further. Start to hear a moaning sound. Sounds very familiar. Sound is moving towards us. Not moving very quickly. Sound of rock and dust being kicked. I turn to Kozlik guy, and we both decided to run. We make it back to the entrance and radio back into Mikhail. As soon as he hears my voice he asks if it's in there. What? Asks me if I saw it. What the fuck are you talking about? You told me we were here for water samples. I tell him about the sounds we heard. He starts to respond and then stops. Won't respond for the next 5 minutes until he makes it over to our location with the other 2 soldiers in tow. By the time they all made it over, the thing sounds like it's close to the entrance. We see its arms come out into the light first, followed by its body and then its legs. It's a human. Thank God. But maybe I spoke too soon. The guy looks absolutely fucked up. Skin is peeling all over the face and arms. Thick layers of it hanging off the body which is highlighted by the harsh sunlight. His face is completely mutilated. His nose is gone from his face. There's only a gaping hole where his nose should be. His mouth is odd. Looks bigger than it should be, maybe 3 times the size of a normal mouth. Lips are blue and look like they're throbbing. Ears are missing earlobes and have random bits of skin drooping off of them. Dude is just walking slowly on all 4s, not really paying attention to any of us. He's moving towards us but it's like he doesn't even really realize that we're here. Before I can ask Mikhail what the fuck is going on, he speaks up.
Ленивая сука.
Unleashes a full mag from his Kalashnikov into both the head and the heart of the guy. After the firing stops the guy kind of takes one more step, if you can call it that, and then slumps to the floor and starts to spasm. Mikhail asks us if he has to do everything ourselves. I ask Mikhail what is going on, what the thing is, why we're here. He hits me with the butt of his Kalashnikov, knocking me to the ground. I yell out and he hits me a few more times in the head and then kicks me a few times. Tells me that it's none of my business and to shut up and follow orders. Orders the other 2 soldiers into the truck, tells Kozlik guy to take that water sample they were after. Hands him a vial. He walks over to the stream. Mikhail puts a bullet into him which causes him to fall into the water. I can barely muffle my scream when I see it happen. He spits on me and tells me I'm lucky. Tells me that they still have a use for me. Says I'm lucky that my father is who he is. Tells me to forget what I saw, or I'll die very soon. Still to this day I have no idea why he didn't kill me. The other 2 soldiers must have been here for a long time and were trusted to keep the secret. Not that I had any idea what I saw anyway. There wasn't exactly much I could tell people. My guess is that me and the Kozlik guy were being used as bait, but then I don't know. Maybe someone informed Mikhail that he took the wrong guy and was on strict orders not to kill me? Maybe he just took the first 2 new guys he could see and that's why there was a mix-up. I only have one more incident to tell you about my time there. It's one that I still can't fully understand and it's possible that I never will. Beginning of 1986. Been at the facility for around a year at this point. Get brought in from my duties early and I'm put in front of the commandeer. Tells me that I have a very important assignment. Says they've been gauging my level of patriotism and concluded that I qualify for this assignment. Tells me I'll be working guard duty in the lower levels of Sector 12B. It's finally time. When I first got here, this would have filled me with excitement. Now, I'm just hoping that I don't fuck anything up and make it through unscathed. Escorted down there by some unfamiliar soldiers. Guessing they were posted at lower levels and that's why. Lead me down a disgusting stairwell. Smells like shit mixed with chemicals. Stairwell was crumbling in places. Reach the bottom and they take me down a corridor. Reach a dead end. They open up a hatch in the floor. Old style ladder attached to the wall like you would see in a sewer. They jab me in the back, signaling me to go down first. Saying a prayer in my head at this point. I'm thinking back to what Mikhail said and hoping I'm not about to die for what I saw. Soldiers don't come down after me. They tell me to just walk. I walk those some tunnels that winded but only went in one direction without any split paths. Reach a bulkhead door. Have no idea what to do so I knock on it. Alarm starts going off, whole place turns red. Oh fuck. Bulkhead doesn't open, camera in the corner lights up. Hear screaming coming from a tannoy in the corner, telling me to kneel and put my hands behind my head if I don't want to die right now. Comply as fast as I can. A group of soldiers funnel out and restrain and blindfold me. Finally have my blindfold taken off. I'm in a corridor looking into a room with a glass window. Lots of equipment set up. Medical equipment. No idea what half of it is for. I only get one instruction the entire time I'm in these lower levels.
Stand in that corner, do not move. If the patient moves, you shoot.
What? I don't say this out loud of course. I was stationed in that room for a total of 5 hours. I was to look straight ahead, say nothing, make no noise and ignore everything that was going on unless I had to take action. This wasn't a regular patient at all. The guy definitely looked Russian. That's probably all I could tell you about him before the surgery started. I'll green text that now. The guy is wheeled in on a bed. He has so many straps holding him down. Straps on his head, his arms and his legs. Completely passed out. 3 men in surgical gear walk in. They ignore me. I expected that. I ignore them too as best as I can. Agonizing 5 hours. They make incisions in the patient. No idea what for. A little while into it, they inject the patient with something. Trying my hardest to look without looking. Needle looks to be filled with something that's black. Just black, nothing else. After they inject the patient, they wait for around 15 minutes. Just checking the guy's vitals. After the time is up, they start making more cuts. One incision below the eye, one just above the left bicep. They're looking at each other and nodding. Start to make a massive incision around the abdomen area. Almost the whole way across. Guy on the table starts to twitch. I start to get nervous. Can't completely see what they're doing as I'm trying to only look out of my peripheral vision and I'm on the left side of the room. The 3 are crowded around him slightly so can basically only see half of the body. Looks like they're stitching him up. They inject him several more times with what looks like the same substance. Completely black. Guy twitches again. Eyes open. I hesitate in my head for a second but then start to point my gun. One of the guys in surgical gear puts up his hand towards me without even looking my way. Tells me no. Not yet. He needs 5 more minutes. I begin to speak but he cuts me off.
I don't care about your orders. I have mine.
He says. I decide to leave him be. The straps look safe enough but if he moves another time I will shoot. I am not going to risk my own life for him. All of them start to take a step back. They are now well into my eye line. I turn around and watch too. The guy on the table is absolutely writhing. The skin on his wrists is bulging. It looks like the lumps are traveling up his arms. His veins are becoming more and more visible and are starting to tint yellow. He is pulling violently against the restraints. The whole table is rocking back and forth. I go to shoot, the surgeon begs me for 1 more minute. I tell him no. I can't risk anything more. The straps holding down the man's head suddenly snaps, and the man raises his head slightly and looks directly at us. He is straining against the neck strap to keep his head in position. He looks furious. His eyes go from blue to bloodshot and then start to yellow ever so slightly. I raise my gun at him. He smiles. I fire 5 bullets directly into his head as the alarm is raised and the facility is put onto high alert. Soldiers flood in and I am restrained and blindfolded again. I hear whispering between the surgeons and the soldiers as I am dragged off, but I cannot make out what they are saying. I am dragged all the way back and hoisted up the ladder and put into a holding cell once again. After this I was spoken to by the commandeer. It was the most uncomfortable talk of my life even though I didn't say a single word. He never raised his voice, never changed his tone, but I could feel the absolute malice behind his words. I stayed in that cell for a month until I was transferred to my father's branch. He told me that he begged them for a month straight. He made any promise that he could to get me out of there. What these promises were I don't know. I wasn't really the same after that. Didn't really climb the ranks much, just kind of coasted along. My father bailed me out a lot. I started treating people differently, like they weren't human. I lashed out. I got angry. I abused my fellow soldiers. Then one day something just snapped in me, and I fled over the border during a mission. Presumed dead I suppose. Maybe they thought I killed myself. As far as I know they abandoned the facility sometime after I left. I'm not sure exactly when. The Estonian army were rumored to have taken control of it after the collapse but I'm not sure what came of it. I tried to stay informed but without my old connections there isn't really much else I could learn to tell you. Any questions I'll try to answer them.
Where do you live now if your English is fluent and proficient?
I'm a citizen of Polska now but I got foreign friends so I stay in England for some time too. My friend helped me write this before I post here.
Great thread Anon, thanks for sharing. What exactly do you think they were doing there, and who were the people they were experimenting on?
It's hard to say. Maybe they try make body stronger for fight. I were there for a long time but only have 3 incident that I told you. People were Uski but who, I do not know.
Are the effects of the black serum contagious in any way? Was contact with the yellow substance discouraged, prohibited for extreme biohazardous reasons? Were there any indications of biosafety levels present within the lab? Could you make out what the scientists were probing for, especially for under the eye?
No one else I see turn yellow or go crazy. I saw it only once in needle and surgery. Pure black.
Good thread Anon. I assume whatever/whenever you got assigned to is some sort of lab that experiment on human and make them have some mutation, and the things that you shot when you first get there seem to be an escape experiment, and sequentially after you just met with a bunch of failed experiment. Seem interesting but not really outside the realm of the possibility given the US has the MK Ultra experiment during the Cold War.